Okay, so hear me out. When was the last time you were actually alone? No phone, no music, no show playing in the background, just you and your thoughts. For most people that answer is, I don't do that. And if I'm being honest, the reason most of us don't do that is because we don't actually like who shows up when it gets quiet. And I think that's worth talking about, because nobody asks this question directly. We talk about relationships, we talk about friendships, we talk about finding the right partner, the right community, the right people, but we never start at the actual beginning. Do you even have a good relationship with yourself? Think about the things you reach for when life gets uncomfortable. Your phone, a drink, another drink, something to watch, something to scroll, porn, food, work, staying busy. Staying so busy that you never have to sit with yourself for more than 5 minutes. And I'm not here to judge any of that. I do it too. We all do. But here's the honest question. What are you escaping from? Because addiction in any form, and I mean any form, it doesn't have to be drugs or alcohol. It can be your phone. It can be validation from other people. It can be constantly needing noise. Addiction is just a relationship with something outside yourself, because the relationship inside feels unbearable. Think about that for a second. The thing you keep going back to, even when you know it's hurting you. What is it giving you that you can't give yourself? Peace, numbness, a feeling of being enough. A few hours where the voice in your head quiets down. And the voice. Let's talk about that voice. Because most of us have one that we would never speak to another human being with. You mess something up, and it goes, "You're an idiot." You look in the mirror, and it goes, "Look at you." You make a mistake at work, and it goes, "You're going to get found out eventually." You would never talk to your best friend that way. You would never talk to a stranger that way. But you talk to yourself that way every single day. So before we even get to relationships with other people, what is your relationship with that voice? Here's something I've been thinking about. A lot of people get drawn to religion, to God, to some kind of higher power or spiritual practice, and I think that's genuinely beautiful. I'm not here to debate anyone's faith, but I want to ask an honest question. Are you drawn to God, or are you drawn to the idea of something outside yourself that can fix what's inside? Because there's a difference. One is faith, the other is outsourcing. And I think a lot of us, whether it's religion, or a therapist, or a partner, or a best friend, we're looking for someone or something outside ourselves to do the work that only we can actually do. There's a Bible verse that doesn't get talked about the way it should. Love your neighbor as yourself. Mark 12:31. Everyone focuses on the love your neighbor part. But read the second half again, as yourself. The assumption built into that verse is that you already love yourself. That the baseline is already there. Love others the way you love you. But what if you don't? What if the baseline is broken? What if you're trying to love other people from a place where you can barely tolerate yourself? That's not a religious question. That's just honest math. You cannot consistently give something you don't have. Carl Jung had this concept called the shadow self. The idea is that every single one of us has a part of ourselves that we hide. Not from other people, from ourselves. The anger you pretend isn't there. The jealousy you'd never admit to. The insecurity underneath the confidence. The part of you that sometimes wants to burn everything down and start over. Jung said something that I keep coming back to. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Read that again. The parts of yourself you refuse to look at, they don't disappear. They just start running the show from backstage. And then one day you look up and wonder why you keep ending up in the same situations. The same arguments. The same patterns. The same relationships that feel different on the surface, but somehow produce the same pain. That's not bad luck. That's the shadow. And the only way through it, the only way is to actually look at it. To sit with the uncomfortable parts of yourself and go, okay, this is also me, and I'm going to stop pretending it isn't. That's not weakness. That's actually the hardest thing a person can do, because it's easy to work on the parts of yourself you're proud of. It takes something else entirely to sit with the parts you're ashamed of. and choose to understand them instead of running. Okay, so now let's say you're doing the work. You're getting honest with yourself. You're looking at the shadow. You're gentler with that voice in your head. Now life starts expanding. Friends, a relationship, a partner, a community, career, family. And here's where it gets interesting. Because expansion is beautiful. Connection is what we're wired for. Every human on earth craves community, craves belonging, craves being known by other people. But there's a version of expansion that's actually just escape with a better story, where you pour so much of yourself into other people, your partner, your friends, your community, that one day you look around and realize you've disappeared. You've become whoever they needed you to be. You've said yes so many times to other people's versions of you that you forgot what your own version felt like. And the tricky part is, it doesn't feel like losing yourself while it's happening. It feels like love. It feels like being a good partner, a good friend, a good person. Until it doesn't. Until you wake up one day exhausted and empty, and quietly resentful of the people you love most, and you don't even know why. That's what happens when you skip the foundation. You can be in a relationship. You can be in a community. You can be surrounded by people who love you, and still be completely alone inside yourself, because nobody else can live in there. That's your territory. And if you haven't made peace with it all, the connection in the world just becomes another form of noise. So here's where I actually land on all of this. I don't think you need to have it all figured out before you enter a relationship. I don't think you need to be healed before you're allowed to love someone. That's not realistic, and honestly, that's not how it works. But I do think there's a difference between someone who is actively in a relationship with themselves, curious about their patterns, honest about their shadows, learning to be a little gentler with that voice, and someone who is using other people to avoid that relationship entirely. One brings something real to the table. The other is just looking for a mirror that's kinder than the one in their own head. And the question isn't whether you're broken. We're all broken in some way. The question is, are you willing to sit with yourself long enough to find out how? Because here's what I genuinely believe. The most generous thing you can do for the people you love, your partner, your friends, your community, is to know yourself. Not perfectly, not completely, just honestly. To be someone who has looked at their own shadow and decided to understand it, instead of project it onto everyone around them. That's not selfish. That's actually the whole foundation. Everything else builds on top of that. Wait, actually, I'll see you next week.